Thank you for purchasing a DF832 PEC attachment for your DF908 stack-loaded lap machine. In your box, you will have instructions, hardware, left-hand arm, right-hand arm, backrest pad, arm mount, floating pulley bracket, left-hand cam, right-hand cam, swivel pulley mount, fixed pulley mount, swivel pulley brackets, cable, and pulleys. The first step will be mounting the arm mount and the swivel pulley mount to the front post of the lap machine. Run your M12 bolt through a washer, through the flange on the arm mount, through the top hole of the front post, into the swivel pulley mount, then cap it off with a washer and lock nut. All Deltec products come with lock nuts. A lock nut has a nylon insert that you must tighten over the bolt that keeps it tight. These nuts and bolts use a 19mm wrench. Next, we're going to grab the cams and determine which goes to what side. The rubber bumpers will be facing toward the inside of the machine, while the flange with adjustment holes will be facing the outside. The rubber bumpers, when installed, will be facing up. Next, we're going to grab the left hand and right hand arms. The arms have a flange that will point toward the rear of the machine. Next, we're going to mate the cams with the arms. If there's a zip tie retaining the bushings in the cam, cut it and don't let the bushings fall out. Next, install the cams on the arms. These might be a tight fit, so rotate the cams while you slide them onto the screws. Make sure the bumpers are facing opposite directions of the arm, and line up the pull pin of the arm with one of the holes in the cam. Once the pull pin locks into the cam, cut the zip tie on the arm mount, making sure the bushings in the arm mount are in place. Use the largest nuts in the hardware pack to keep everything together. Next, using an adjustable wrench, tighten the large nuts on top until they bottom out. Rotate the arms while tightening. If you start to feel resistance while moving the arm, untighten the nut on top 1/4 of a turn. Now it's time to assemble the swivel pulleys. Grab the swivel pulley brackets and the short M10 bolts, washers, and lock nuts, and the two 3.5-inch pulleys. Bolt them together with the washers on the outside of the swivel pulley flange. Cut the zip ties on the swivel pulley mount and feed the long M12 bolt through a washer, the bushings on the swivel pulley mount, into the swivel pulley bracket, and cap it off with the washer and lock nut. The swivel pulley bracket flange will be facing down on the machine. Repeat the same process for the other side, then tighten down the whole assembly. The long bolts will use 19mm wrenches, while the short bolts will use 17s. Make sure that the swivel pulley brackets swivel freely. If they don't, back off the nut 1/4 of a turn. Now it's time to build the floating pulley assembly. Grab the floating pulley bracket, a 3.5-inch pulley, and another 45mm M10 bolt, washers, and lock nut. Next, we will be mounting the fixed pulley bracket to the machine. Using the medium-length M10 bolts, washers, and lock nuts, bolt the bracket to the bottom two holes of the front post. Then bolt the pulley to the bracket with washers on the outside of each side of the bracket. Finally, tighten all the bolts with some 17mm wrenches. With the fixed pulley tight, it's time to install the cable. Route the cable through the swivel pulley bracket and over to the cam. Then, using the shortest M10 bolts, washers, and lock nuts, bolt the cable to the frontmost hole of the cam. Route the other end of the cable through the floating pulley flange, behind the other cables, and up to the other swivel pulley flange. Go behind the floating pulley, then bolt the other end of the cable to the frontmost hole of the right cam. Don't tighten anything yet, because we might have to adjust it later. Now it's time to complete the cables on the machine. Unhook the bottom cable of the lap machine from its tab. Wrap it around the fixed pulley, then connect it to the floating pulley flange. Make sure the cable is in all the grooves of the pulleys. If the cable does not reach, adjust the cable on the cams until the floating pulley is close enough to the bottom to attach to the bottom cable. Once the tension is set correctly and you verified that the machine works, it's time to tighten the rest of the remaining bolts. Finally, it's time to bolt up the backrest. Grab 2 washers and 2 medium M10 bolts. Then bolt the backrest to the 2 middle holes of the front support. Get both bolts started by hand first before you tighten them down with a wrench. If you tighten one down, it might be hard to get the other one started. Finally, carefully install your Deltec Fitness decal. Thank you for choosing Deltec Fitness.